This week on the Wealthy Pilots podcast, Scott and I are going to talk about traditional versus Roth IRA. What's the hubbub? What's the big difference? Let's get into it this week. Here we go.
We've got some turbulence up ahead. Reach out to the Pilots Planner.
Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. Scott, thanks for hanging out once again, my friend. Walking us through all this crazy stuff that makes up the world of investing, finance, retirement, all that good jazz. We want to talk about, traditional versus IRA this week, versus Roth this week, traditional IRA versus Roth this week, because it gets confusing for a lot of people who aren't, dealing with it all the time. I think a lot of people have the basics, but they don't really realize how much more there could be into it. So let's talk about that this week. How you doing?
Living the dream, man. Better than ever.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah.
For sure.
You been flying lately? Get anybody take you up for a ride lately?
It's funny you say that. I actually have a discovery flight today where
Nice.
I'm going up to kind of just learn about what it's like to get your private pilot's license and all that. So,
Very cool.
You know me, dude. I'm just an old infantry dude. I'm not planning on being a pilot, but it's always been an interest. So I'm going to get taken up today. It's funny you asked that.
I know that you love it, so I figured, hey, you're right there. You got them in your backyard, so I kind of figured maybe you were making friends with somebody who might get you a ride here and there. So.
Oh, not in one of those.
Not in one of those.
Yeah, you need some serious high level friends to get you in. It's funny. The fighter wing actually only has one 2-seater. Most of them are 1-seaters, actually.
You can't pull a cruise. You can't pull a
common
Tom Cruise
misnomer from Top Gun. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's jump in and get to our topic, man. So give us a quick difference between the traditional IRA and then the Roth.
Perfect. Yeah. So, really there's three different buckets of how the IRS looks at money. We have like taxable, and taxable money is like what you would save in an individual or a joint brokerage account. The capital gains and the dividends all get taxed. We have tax deferred. That's like your traditional 401k or IRA. The money goes in pre-tax and then it grows and then it comes out and it's taxed when it comes out. And then you have Roth, and Roth, we put after-tax dollars in and then it grows tax-free forever. There's a lot more limitations around that with your income and things of that nature as far as Roth IRAs, but most plans, including all the plans for our commercial airline pilots, have the Roth 401k as an option to build that wealth tax-free as well.
Yeah, and so my follow-up question really is, why do so many people have their money in a traditional IRA or a 401k? We'll even just throw that in there. But in a traditional IRA, when you're going to be paying taxes on it later? Well, I think the answer is pretty easy, right? Because A, we've been taught that forever and a day, and B, nobody wants to pay taxes. So if we can kick it down the road, why wouldn't we, right? Yeah. So why is that maybe a problem?
There's a few things there to unpack. One, I think in terms of why not kick it down the road, to me, I view taxes as a problem. So like any other problem in my life, I'm trying to, if I can solve it today, solve it today. Don't put off tomorrow what we can handle today. That's sage advice anyways. That's not my quote. I just like that quote. But I feel the same way with taxes. Pay that sucker now and then never have to pay it again. But that's just my perspective. And a lot of my clients subscribe to that too. So when we're implementing their plan, we're figuring out how to do that as much as we can just to drive some of that long-term tax efficiency in their plan. The other reason in terms of why we see such large tax deferred accounts like in that traditional 401k, I think it comes down to two things. One, many people meet an advisor after they start working with a CPA. Everybody has to get their taxes done. So unless you're filing it yourself, most people are reaching out to a CPA for help. That CPA is trying to help you typically defer taxes. Here's how you can lower your tax bill this year. They don't have the capacity to think strategically long-term for the clients typically.
That's their job. Their job is looking, they're very revisionist history. Yes. And it's in the box.
Rearview mirror. Here's what we need to do. So saving your tax deferred account. So that's part of it. And then the other part is, and this is so silly, but it's the default. When I get hired, they enroll me into the traditional plan. So that's it. It's just the default.
Yeah. Well, think about a target date fund, for example, right?
For sure.
The reason so many people take those is because we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know this stuff. We've taken a job. I think when they first introduced, the Roth's been around since 96. Target date funds they're not that much younger, that much older, I guess, however you want to say that. But when they first started, there was a limited number. There's 2,200 target date funds now. Yeah. So it gets crazy. A little mind boggling as to so you just pick one, 2040. Yep. Cool. I'm retiring in 2040. That's the one I'm taking. But there's like 15 2040 funds. How do you even know which one to take? Right. So I'm with you that I think it's the path of least resistance. And we've been taught that.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, I get auto enrolled into one thing, and then, in my mind, it's on autopilot, and I just kind of go. And I look in the account balance every now and then, and it's growing. And as long as it's growing, I'm good. I'm not really thinking of the long-term implications of my short-term actions. So, but again, if we can be a little bit more intentional with this, comes back to what we're going to talk about probably almost any time. What is our long-term plan? What are the short-term things we should do to set us up for this long-term plan? Like, especially in retirement, I want all my guys to look back and say, man, I'm glad I did, instead of, man, I wish I would have. And I can tell you, brother, every single client that I've worked with that's a retiree who has all their money in a traditional 401k is saying, I wish I would have diversified across those 3 tax buckets. All right. I always thought about diversification with my investments, never thought about it from this tax standpoint. And so I don't care if you're brand new. I don't care if you're a captain with 30,000 flight hours and you're retiring in 5 years. It makes sense to look at this because, again, most of these guys are flying enough. They got a good enough income, and they got enough action from an investment standpoint that even in a few years, you can make a big difference in any of these buckets with some intentionality and some small tweaks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man, for sure. Well, let's wrap it up with this. Why is the Roth so powerful? Especially right now, if you think about what the situation that we're in, for the last number of years, everybody's been talking about, you hear conversion, right? Doing a Roth conversion. It's the devil that you know. We know what the tax rates are today, right? At the time we're taping this, we're in the heated, midst of the election run, right? We don't know what's going to happen depending on, if someone stays in the office or someone gets back into the office or whatever the case is going to be. That could change tax codes. So all that's up in the air. And so Roth can be so powerful because maybe if you're sitting on, let's say, $1 million in a traditional account, you want to start thinking about maybe paying some of that taxes now at a lower rate, which is why this conversation has been so hot the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's the converting is definitely one aspect of it. And, a little known fact for some of these guys is if you start saving in your Roth 401k, your match goes over there. I mean, it is huge. It's huge what they can grow over there in a short amount of time. And so the other thing they don't necessarily realize is that, in essence, the IRS is treating it like a Roth conversion. So they're getting all that money going over there, and then they're owing more tax on it up front. Not more tax on it, but they're owing the equivalent tax on it up front. But they're getting more money into that Roth account instead of later on in life when I do a conversion over to Roth and I'm having to withhold some of that and send it to the IRS. And so it's a way that when they're paying the taxes as they go out of their paycheck, out of their cash flow, and they're getting all that into Roth, they don't even really notice that the taxes are a little bit higher because they're working. When you're retired and you're trying to do that, trust me, you know that you feel the pain from a tax standpoint because you have no income. And anything you're moving over there, you're having to pay for and withhold out of your own savings. It's brutal for a lot of the retirees to be navigating that. So the earlier you can get on it, the better. But even these late stage guys, I'm telling you, a couple of years even makes a big difference. And it adds a lot of flexibility to how you're going to pay yourself in retirement. And ultimately, if you're going to leave money behind to your kids, you're not passing this tax burden on to the kids. Like, there's enough tax burden getting passed on from our, $38 trillion in national debt. And we know tax rates are going to have to go up eventually. They're going to have to go up eventually. And so we pay them now while they're lower. And then we're setting ourselves free, and we're basically taking that debt out of our money and getting it to where all of it's ours, and it can grow tax free without those chains of the government debt on it.
There you go. I mean, ideally, I think when we leave this planet, we're hoping that if we do leave something behind for our kids, we're hoping to leave it as tax efficient as possible. So, why not have those conversations? So again, if you need to talk with Scott, if you need to sit there and think about, hey, I've got to get a better strategy, or I want a second opinion on the strategy I've already got in place, whatever the case is, reach out to Scott. Find him online at thepilotsplanner.com. That's thepilotsplanner.com. You've been seeing it on the screen throughout the show here. If you've been checking us out on YouTube, you can see it on his t-shirt as well, but go check him out. It's in the show note descriptions. You can find all the information you need there and get started today. And as I mentioned, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube or Apple or Spotify, and that way you can catch new episodes when they come out. Scott, my friend, thanks for hanging out as always.
All right, see you, brother. We'll see you out there.
I always appreciate you breaking it down for us right here on the Wealthy Pilots podcast. So subscribe, and we'll see you back here with more episodes coming very soon.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.